Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem HaKavod, Malachuto, Leolam Vaed. Kol od baleva penima nefesh Yehudi homia Olafate Mizrach Kadima Ein Letzion Sophia Od lovda tikvateinu Hatikva bat shnot alapayim להיות עם החופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות עם החופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. Shalom, shalom, everyone, and welcome to Israel is Forever, celebrating the 77th anniversary of the state, the miracle state of Israel. Thank you for being with us today. We're very excited about this time together. You're going to get information during this meeting that you cannot get readily anywhere else. So get ready, buckle your seatbelts, stay put. We are going to start. But first, I want to read a scripture to you today. Psalm 77:13-14. It says, "Your way, O God, is in holiness. Who is so great a God as our God? You are the God who does wonders. You have declared your strength among your people," the God that does wonders. You want to know more about him? You need to come to our Sukkot tour that's upcoming in October during the time of the Feast of Tabernacles. But right now, you're going to understand that it is a sign and a wonder that Israel still exists. And especially after 77 years and more of great battles. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to listen to my song, Your Children Shall Return, that's based on Jeremiah 31, that talks about the children of Israel returning back to their border. A tremendous miracle, the biggest miracle of the 20th century. After 2,000 years of exile, the Jewish people are back to their land. So your children shall return.
מיני קולך מבכי, מיני קולך מבכי רחל אמי. Refrain your voice from tears. מיני קולך מבכי רחל אמי. כי יש שכר לפעולתך ויש תקווה באחריתך. יש שכר לפעולתך ויש תקווה באחריתך. ושבו בנים מארץ אויב, ושבו בנים לגבולם. Your prodigal children, they shall return to their land. תודה שנתת לי לחלום. תודה שהביאתני עד הלום. For all your promises say yes and amen, and all my dreams will be fulfilled. כי כל הבטחותיך הן כן ואמן, וכל חלומותיי יתגשמו גם כן. תודה that you've allowed me to dream. תודה שהביאתני עד הלום. I will smile on a rainy day when things are tough and I have no say. תודה שנתת לי לחלום. Your prodigal children, they shall return to their land. ושבו בנים מארץ אויב, ושבו בנים לגבולם. תודה that you've allowed me to dream.
And that is it, that you've allowed me to dream, that you've allowed Israel to dream, and for 2,000 years to keep on repeating unceasingly, Lashana haba b'Yerushalayim habnuya, next year in the rebuilt Jerusalem, for 2,000 years, far before Islam ever conquered the promised land. We're going to talk more, and I'm going to give you a proper introduction in a moment, and also get to see what nations are represented here today. But I want to show you the greeting for Yom Ha'atzmaut, the Day of Independence, 77, from a young...
There is a story of old.
From a young news commentator from Channel 14 in Israel, who is what I would call the Zionistic patriotic channel. And another dreamer here, let's listen to this dreamer. He says, after 77 years of political independence, alongside the tyrannical rule of bureaucrats, the hegemony is finally beginning to fall apart. The centers of power are falling one by one, and the unbridled rampage embodies the throes of death. Difficult days indeed, very difficult. from the outside and much more from the inside. But we are part of a generation that will be etched in history for generations to come. This dreamer, Moti Castell, this special young news commentator from Channel 14, is not afraid to dream that the lion indeed will defeat the dragon.
Have you not heard? Has it not been told? There is a story of old. There is a story of old. Have you not heard? Has it not been told? There is a story of old. There is a story of old. That the lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. The Lion of Judah has defeated the dragon. Have you not heard? Has it not been told? There is a story of old. There is a story of old. Have you not heard? Has it not been told? There is a story of old. There is a story of old. That a lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. The Lion of Judah has defeated the dragon. But in Goshen there was light, though darkness all around. It didn't bother them at all. They had a covenant of old. A lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. The Lion of Judah has defeated the dragon. Let everything that has breath praise Yahweh. Praise Him with unmasked face and with unrelenting faith. Defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. The Lion of Judah has defeated the dragon.
Amen. And from this place, I want to welcome every one of you to this very special Zoom conference meeting that can be a university course, I assure you. What I'm going to give you is what you normally cannot get anywhere else. I'm not going to tell you the obvious things like Israel is a startup nation and other things like that. I'm going to actually explain from the roots, the conflict, how is Israel been surviving this horrendous conflict that didn't start on October 7th. But before then, I would like to welcome you personally. And where are you from? So go ahead to the chat right now and let us know what nation you are representing. So you're invited to go to the chat as I'm giving the introduction right now. And Norway, hallelujah, Sweden, I have from Israel, from Taiwan, from China, from Germany, Hong Kong, from Belize, from Philippines, from Malaysia, from Papua New Guinea, from Mexico, from USA, from Suriname, from Japan, hallelujah. Wow. India, from India as well, from Peru, from China, Finland, we already said, Mexico, Taiwan, we said, hallelujah. Wow, a lot of nations here today. Maybe my assistants will help me to find out how many nations are represented here today, but you can see that we are representing nearly the whole world, every continent, and that is definitely very exciting. So you can continue typing, especially if there are other nations, but you can also, if it was repeated, you can also repeat your nation again. That's perfectly fine. Let's see how many are from where. And that is very exciting because I believe this message is a message that 29 nations represented. Wow, praise Yah. 29 nations represented. That's definitely powerful. Thank you so much. And, I'll tell you something is that I believe many more nations should be represented. The reason is because this message is to go ballistic all over the world. And so after I finish speaking it to you, go ahead and make sure that you're going to share it and share it and share it and share it to many other people as well. So we started with a special greeting of this young Israeli that is not afraid to dream, that in spite of all the hardship, we have now 31 nations registered. Awesome. Amen. And because really, if you're not a dreamer, if you do not have faith, you cannot by any means survive in Israel. That's the thing. And so I'm going to talk to you during all this time. I'm just giving you a short introduction because we're going to be quite a time here. I hope you made space for this because this is something very important and it's like a university course that you're getting for free. So we are going to get an introduction on the root of the conflict, the rise of Zionism, the invention of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian cause is Hitler's child. We're going to talk about that too. The Nakba versus the Nachsa. I know some of you don't even know the terminology, but you will understand as we go. From the river to the sea, the return of 6 million Palestinians. We're going to talk about what that means to Israel and demographics. From the river, so Hudna versus peace. What do they mean when they talk peace? War and Aliyah, how is that connected? And what does Aliyah mean? Return of the Jewish people back to their holy land. The strong one rules and the demographic solution, that is Aliyah. So we're going to talk about all of that and give the solution for this conflict also by the end. This may take us a while, beloved. We easily can be here 2 to 3 hours. I hope you will be able to stay as much as possible because you will be able to get informed and instructed like never before about many, many things. So I'm going to tell you immediately what my sources are going to be. So let's take a look at the sources that I have. The first source that I'm going to have is the Bible. Yeah, the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy. And I put them both higher than any other book I've ever read. And I've read a lot more books that are not mentioned here because actually the books that I'm going to refer to or that I'm quoting, they only confirm to me what I've known since I was a teenager in the land of Israel when I wanted to go and settle in Judea and Samaria before even my army service. And then certainly after 1993, the Oslo Accords, when I declared that this was a catastrophe. The Oslo Accords are a catastrophe. So first is the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy. And then I began to see only lately, until now they have not been available, all kinds of books that begin to speak the truth, and they start in Hebrew. Praise Yah. So Dr. Eddie Cohen, the Mufti and the Jews, advisable to read that book. Tzvi Yechezkeli, I told you it was jihad. Adi Schwartz and Einat Wilf, October return. And Yosef Haddad, let me explain, and much more. Okay, this is just part of the sources that I am based on, which basically the sources of the books here, for the most part, confirmed what the Bible and the spirit of prophecy had been showing me for many, many decades by now. Now, I'm also going to recommend to you a highly, even above any other book, for you to go to these books that I carry, that I've written myself. And that's even before most of these other books were published. So the books that I recommend right now, let's put the list out there. It's The Israel Factor, Exposing Haman, Amalek, and Hamas. I don't see them on the screen for some reason. So The Israel Factor, Exposing Haman, Amalek, and Hamas, Sheep Nations, and The Voice of These Ashes. Now, I know that we're going to show all of them very fast, but what we're going to do is you go ahead and you go to zionsgospel.com and you're going to find all of my books. These books are mandatory for any believer, Christian, non-Christian, lover of Israel, non-lover of Israel. These books, again, The Israel Factor, Exposing Haman, Amalek, and Hamas, Sheep Nations, and The Voice of These Ashes. So these are my books that I recommend for this seminar, for you to follow up with them and actually to go ahead and get them. Praise the living Yah. So also, before we come to the end of this meeting, I'm going to put right now a slide in there so that you know where you can give and say thank you for the seminar. And bless Israel, actually. We've got lots of projects, boots on the ground right here in Israel. In fact, next week, we are on our way to the Golan Heights to meet with an entire division platoon that we are supporting. Many, many things, other things that, I cannot get into it right now here. But for all of you that want to say thank you and all of you that want to support Israel, don't look any further. You've got it right here. Take a look, take a good picture of that barcode, and you can get in there and go ahead and say thank you for the seminar and donate for any projects that you would like to donate as well. Amen. So I put it there on advance as well because we're going to begin to run. So I hope you're ready. I hope you have a notebook or something or your phone where you're taking notes, because you may want to take notes of some of the things that I may not maybe completely advertised out there. Okay, so first of all, I would like to quote a scripture. Joel 4:19-20. Joel 4:19-20. Egypt will become a desolation and Edom a desert wasteland because of the violence against the children of Judah, because they shed innocent blood in their land. But Judah will be inhabited forever, Jerusalem from generation to generation. So you can see here that there's going to be a judgment on those that shed innocent blood of the Jewish people in our land, and they will not be anymore, but Judah will be inhabited forever and Jerusalem from generation to generation. So that's the end of the book. That's the end result of all the conflict that you are a witness of it today. So the recent giant terror fires, because we've had some recent fires in Israel, and it was terror fires, arson fires, stress the fact that Israel is still holding 77 years after its inception because of the God of wonders. That's why I quoted from Psalm 77 to show you the God of wonders. In order to live in Israel, you must believe in miracles. Yes, all thing here is terror fires. This is not just somebody forgetting a cigarette or something like that. It may be that some people were neglectful on a very hot day, but these are terror fires, and it was pretty terrible. But let's take a look right now at that video. Can you put the video back again so that we can see the terrifiers long enough so that you understand what we just went through? And when I'm saying we just went through, I mean even Rabbi and I that are right now in Israel, and we needed to be evacuated because of these terror fires. Okay, so go ahead, put the video for a couple of minutes.
هاي السيارات هاي بلش يولعوا السيارات كمان، بلش يولعوا السيارات كمان. الله أكبر.
Yeah, okay, that's just a little taster of what we went through just a few days ago. In fact, on the Hebrew date of the Memorial Day for the fallen soldiers and the victims of terror, and the Hebrew date for the independence of Israel, which is the 5th of the month of Iyar, which happened to be in 77 years ago, the 14th of May, while the 15th of May was the first day, and we are on like what would have been the first day of the Jewish state after 2,000 years of exile. And it starts with a war. It starts with the War of 1948, called also the Independence War, which was the War of Independence against the Brits, which happened to leave all of their police stations and army stations and weapons in the hands of the freshly created Jordanian Legion, and became eventually the Arab Legion, which joined the Jordanian. So we started already at a great disadvantage. It was impossible to survive. Our soldiers were mostly Shoah survivors, Holocaust survivors that were not trained in war. And they found themselves literally fighting with 5 countries that came against the newly born state of Israel already on the 15th of May, like today, 1948. Now, but I'm not going to go back there. I actually am going to fast forward to today. What Israelis have suffered in the last 5 years only. Let's talk about it. Okay, the things that Israelis have suffered, and we're going to see the list right now on the screen. We have suffered the draconic COVID-19 dictatorship. I call it a dictatorship because that's what it was. The devastating internal strife. 5 elections. The massacre of October 7. Iron Swords War. Northern Arrows War. Attacks from Yemen. War in Judea and Samaria. War in Syria. Infiltrations from Jordan. Egypt's army at the border with Rafah. The war to retrieve the hostages. 2 mega arson terror fires. All that in the last 5 years. Now, if you've got problems, then look towards Israel. If we still can smile and sing and celebrate, that means that the God of Israel is working in Israel. Now, let me give you some important facts right now, and let's take a look at them. Iran has 3,000 ballistic missiles. In April 2024, Iran conducted its first ever direct attack on Israel, launching some 300 missiles and drones at the Jewish state, the vast majority of which were shot down by Israel and its allies. Okay, so try to see how do you feel when you have 300 ballistic missiles that are huge and heavy flying over your head and you not knowing where they are going to land. Now, we actually suffer this every day because of the Houthis. They're sending us a wake-up call nearly every morning, sometimes in the evenings, and we need to go to the shelters. We yesterday, for example, we woke up, and one of us was in the shower, and we had to get out of the shower and get to the shelter in 1.5 minutes, and that's a good case. And that kind of reality is something that we experience nearly every day because of the Houthis. Even though President Trump has said that they surrendered, I think that he does not understand something you are going to understand here today, which is the difference between hudna and surrender, or hudna and peace. We're gonna know more about it later on. So what is known about these attacks that we are experiencing all of the times in Israel? Let's take a look for a moment right now. According to the Israel Defense Forces, the aerial attack by Iran comprised more than 180. This is the second attack by Iran. The first one was in April with 300 ballistic missiles. This one was the second one on October 1st. And it had more than 100 ballistic missiles, the largest single ballistic missile attack ever. With assistance from the US and other allies, Israel's multi-layered air defense system, which consists of the short-range Iron Dome, medium-range David Sling, and long-range Arrow 3 air defense systems, intercepted most of the aerial attacks. Most of the ballistic missiles, which have the capability of carrying a nuclear warhead, were shot down inside of Israel by the long-range Arrow 3 air defense system. The Iranian regime's ballistic missiles can reach Israel in 12 minutes, unlike the drones or cruise missiles that were used in its April attack on Israel. Tragically, shrapnel from an intercepted ballistic missile killed a Palestinian man in the West Bank. No other casualties were reported. So besides one Palestinian in Judea and Samaria that is constantly suffering the hostility of the so-called Palestinians, no one else was killed. Now, not all the missiles were intercepted. Footage circulating on social media shows Iranian missile impacts in central Israel, including at a school. Iran made a big mistake tonight, and it will pay for it, said Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after the Iranian missile attack on Israel, which he confirmed failed due to Israel's advanced air defense system. Netanyahu warned that those who attack Israel, from Hamas leaders to Hezbollah commanders, will understand the country's resolve, calling for global support against Tehran and emphasizing Israel is on the move and the axis of evil is retreating. Very interesting, of course, important words that were said by our Prime Minister Netanyahu. But we would like to hear some more words that are being spoken about this situation. And we're going to take a look at what's happening with the border. This is about Iran, okay? So now let's go to the proxies, because Iran has got proxies: Syria and Jordan and Lebanon and Yemen and Hamas and Hezbollah. All of them are the proxies. In fact, even the demonstration of the protesters inside of Israel are proxies of Iran. Iran has been reaching out through the social media, even the chief of the general staff, Lieutenant Eyal Zamir. That's a new one. This area is a vital area, Syria, right? This area is a vital area. We entered it following the collapse of Syria, and that's why we are holding key positions and are on the front lines to defend ourselves in the best possible way. From this location, you can see all those positioned along this ridge. It's a strategic point. We don't know how things will develop here, but our presence has significant security importance. The IDF troops will continue to operate in the security area and protect the residents from any threat. Now, I just need to report to you something that just came today in the newspapers. It's official that President Trump has literally removed the sanctions from Syria. I want to just remind all of you that Syria is ruled today by President al-Julani, and this man is an ISIS man. And some people say, well, he's not an ISIS man anymore. He's an ex-ISIS. There's no such thing. He's not an ex-ISIS. He's an ISIS man, and he's been butchering the Alawites and has been tried. The Alawites are those that cooperated with Assad, and they're now also trying their best to do the same to the Druze that Israel is actually protecting. So technically, President Trump has removed sanction from a butcher, and that causes grave concerns both for America and, of course, for Israel. Anyways, let's continue going because I'm presenting a picture to you before I show you more things. Let's jump into April 2025, the largest terror fires in history, probably instigated by no other than Iran, the head of the octopus of evil. So, they were lit in numerous locations in Israel, especially in the Jerusalem surroundings, hills and forests where we are right now, evacuating thousands of people from their homes and burning many thousands of beautiful trees. Islam causes a desolation wherever it goes. Let me tell you just a quick story that I have from my beginnings in 1988 when I just met, or either Yeshua the Messiah met me. And as an Israeli, as I was guiding tourists at the Sea of Galilee, he called me to his service. I revealed himself to me, washed me with clean water, gave me a new heart, gave me a new spirit. And as a tour guide, a few days later, I was guiding a group that came from Miami, Florida, of Cubans. And I remember that they crossed through the Rafah border. That's a border with Egypt. At the time, there was a border crossing directly into Israel from there. And when they crossed the border, the first thing that they told me is, it is incredible. We just came from Egypt, and it's nothing but a desolation, a desert. It's so backward. And we've crossed into Israel. And the moment we crossed into Israel, it was like going from hell to heaven, from a desolation to a Garden of Eden. You're going to mark my words, but go anywhere Islam is ruling, and you're going to see that it causes both a social and also material and also natural desolation. That's typical of Islam. That's the reason why most of the Muslims are actually in very desert lands right now. They don't make them bloom. And until Israel became a state, or rather, until the Jews began to return to Israel at the end of the 19th century, this land ruled by the Muslims for on and off 13 centuries had become nothing but a desert, sand dunes, rocks, and swamps, because that's what Islam does. Now, we are going to move ahead, and I'm going to go and show you a video from an enemy source on purpose, from a video from a pro-Palestinian biased news outlet in Australia describing the 7th front, actually it's 8 fronts, because he didn't include Jordan in there, the 8-front war that Israel is fighting. Go ahead and put that video on. Let's listen.
Israel is now at war on 7 fronts. The Middle East has never seen this many wars simultaneously. In recent weeks, Israel has bombed Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and now Iran. Israel's attack was in retaliation for Iran's missile attack on Israel 3 weeks ago, which in turn was in retaliation for Israel's attack on the Iranian consulate in Syria. So will Iran now yet again retaliate? Having recently been to both Iran and Israel, it's clear to me that neither country wants a full-scale war. Israel would probably win, but both sides would suffer enormously. Until now, it's been Iran's proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthis and Hamas, engaging Israel. It's now a direct war, Iran against Israel. For Iran, the question is, does it want Tehran to end up looking like Gaza? For Israel, the question is, what is its longer-term strategy? Militarily, Israel sees this as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to destroy Hamas and Hezbollah. But what is Israel's political strategy? How long can Israel keep bombing its neighbours? After the wars, what will its neighbourhood look like? And is Israel prepared to address the conflict that feeds so many of these other conflicts? Its 57-year-old military occupation of the Palestinians.
Yeah, okay, so you can see he gave quite a good explanation, this newscaster. And then he ends with what he really believes on, the occupation of the Palestinians. So what we are going to visit here today, is Israel really occupying the Palestinians, or is it a simple fable? We're gonna know that in a moment, but before we go there, I would like to visit with Mark Twain. You know, Mark Twain visited Israel at the time that it was still called Palestine in the 19th century. And Mark Twain wrote a book about it called Innocents Abroad, and this is what he wrote here. He said, Palestine is desolate and unlovely, and why should it be otherwise? Can the curse of the deity beautify a land? Palestine is no more of this workday world. It is a sacred to poetry and tradition. It is a dream land. Wow, what can I say? Well, Mark Twain at the time, of course, had the understanding that most Christians had, and some still do, that Israel will forever be under a curse, and therefore Israel will never be but a dreamland in fable, in poetry, and in the Bible, except I'm sitting right now in Israel and broadcasting to you this Zoom, and my family made Aliyah, which is immigration to the land, in 1970. And so that was 55 years ago. And when we came together with a boatload of Chileans from Chile to make Aliyah here to Israel, like me, there have been millions that have come and will be coming and are coming. And we're going to see by the end of this broadcast why I'm saying that actually the war on demographics is one of the main keys, if not the main key, to win the war that is now raging, not only from the 8 fronts I'm talking about, but from more fronts, because I could consider the media a front, and the media is definitely a front. I could consider the protests within Israel a front. So I would say 10 fronts, really, at this point in time. But so let's talk about this. First of all, Mark Twain is visiting here in the 19th century. What does he find again? Can we put that slide again? Let's read it again. I want to get the spirit of what he's saying. And what he said is, Palestine is desolate and unlovely. I think I could easily stop right there. Why? Because this is exactly the point. The point is that there never existed a Palestinian state, and there never existed a Palestinian nation. In fact, what happened is that the then called Palestine, which is the name that the Romans gave it after they conquered Jerusalem and Israel in year 70 AD, the then called Palestine, which is a name that is on purpose to mock, the covenant name Israel, was under Turkish rule, which is Muslim rule. The Ottoman Empire was ruling for 400 years, in this case for 300 years. It was already ruling, and for 400 years until finally it succumbed to the British. And the only thing that you could see is that the land was desolate and unlovely. So you've got a Christian witness that made the pilgrimage on a boat with other Americans to come and see what is Israel, or the Holy Land. What is the Holy Land like? So now, first thing I want to establish here is that a Palestinian nation had never existed. The land was desolate. There were Arabs that belonged to one of the Arab nations around and settled in occupied Palestine by the different empires like the Turks and then the British. So this narrative that the Palestinians are under the occupation of the Israelis is already from the beginning a false narrative. Those Arab Palestinians, the ones that lived in the then called Palestine, they were under the occupation of the Turkish and the British. To claim Palestinian nationality is a fallacy. It never existed. In the same way, me, for example, and my family that has been here since before 1930 in the old city of Jerusalem, we can claim the same. And Jews that have been living in the old city of Jerusalem, even all the way to the 1700s, can claim the same. They were Palestinian Jews because that's the name that the Romans had renamed it to taunt the Jewish people, to mock the Jewish people. So those Palestinian Jews, they lived under the occupation of the Turkish Empire and the British Empire. And the Palestinian Arabs, they lived under exactly the same occupation, the Turkish Empire and the British Empire. There was no Jewish state at the time, and there was no Palestinian state at the time. There was no Jewish state. Well, when I'm saying Palestinian state, there was not Arab state in Palestine at the time. There were different Arabs that came from different nations. They settled here, many of them from Egypt, from Iraq, from Syria, from various areas of Arabia, and they would, or even Turkey, and they settled here. And of course, you know, they worked the land here or didn't. Whatever they did, they were little villages. There was no central government, no nationhood, no nothing. So there's nothing but Jews and Arabs under Turkish and British occupation of what? Not occupation of Palestine, occupation of the promised land, occupation of the Holy Land, occupation of the land of Israel that had been occupied since 70 AD, when it fell completely into the hands of the Romans, and then it went through Rome and Byzantium, and then various Muslim empires, and then the Crusaders that were Christians, and then Turkey, and then and Mamluks and others, and then Turkey, and then the British, and then finally came the state of Israel. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I'm just presenting the case here that the whole thing about a Palestinian nation is a fable, because I could say that I am a Palestinian as well. In 1948, in the area of the mandate designated for the Jewish state, there already was a Jewish majority of 600,000, and there was an Arab minority of 400,000. The total population of Arabs in the whole land was about 1.4 million, out of which about 700,000 fled in obedience to the command of the Arab nations. Israel then moved into the deserted villages and built cities. Okay, beloved, so here I am. Not only am I right now debunking the fable that there is such a thing called a Palestinian nation or a Palestinian people, but I'm also debunking the fact that Israel expelled 700 or 750,000 Palestinians, which is what they claim, which is what they base the entire conflict on. And you're going to understand it, that everything is about returning, not only them, but them and the children and the grandchildren. In every one of these Arabs that used to live in Palestine until 1948, before it became the state of Israel, they have a key. They have a key in their home. And the key is a token so that they always remember that they want to return to their Palestine, and that there is no way they can return unless the state of Israel does not exist any longer. And therefore, there is no way to come to any peace, because in advance, they already have that vision. You're going to see it as we continue. And so, first of all, it wasn't the Israelis that expelled the Arabs from here. It was the Arab nations that told the Arabs living then in the then called Palestine, that now was called the State of Israel as of the 15th of May of 1948. From that time, the Arab nations told the Arabs, flee, leave your villages, get away so that we can come in with our armies and destroy the State of Israel in its inception. And then after we finish destroying the State of Israel in its inception, then you can all come back and take the plunder. And 700 to 750,000 Arabs left the newly born State of Israel. And what did Israel do? As she was attacked by the 5 Arab armies that tried to annihilate her before she could even breathe, kind of like when a baby is born and you kill it right as the baby is born. Then the Israelis moved into the deserted villages that the Arabs left because the Arab nations called them to leave. So they called this day, when they left their villages, the Nakba. I wanted to remember this day, the Nakba, which means the disaster, the tragedy, the catastrophe. That's what they call the Nakba. And therefore they always remember and commemorate it annually, so as to not to forget that their purpose is to retaliate against the Nakba and to actually get all their villages back that right now they are no more. They are no more because Israelis, of course, went ahead and settled them after all the Arabs evacuated them, left them, because they were called by the Arab nations to do that. Then eventually those same Arab nations will help to perpetuate, together with UNRWA, to perpetuate the Palestinian problem and the refugee problem. The purpose is, at the end of the day, nothing but the annihilation of the Zionist state, which is Israel. So, and just hope that some of you are already getting something out of this, but we are going to continue on. While the State of Israel was established on 15th of May of 1948 and was admitted to the United Nations, a Palestinian state was not established at the time. The remaining territories of pre-1948 Palestine, what people call the West Bank, which is Judea and Samaria, and East Jerusalem, where our Watchman apartment is, and the Gaza Strip, were administered from 1948 till 1967 by Jordan and Egypt, respectively. And in 1967, Israel recovered Judea and Samaria from the Jordanians. The Arab nations have perpetuated the refugee camps both in Jordan and Lebanon, and does not allow them to be dismantled in Gaza, Judea, or Samaria. In other words, they've perpetuated a constant refugee state for them, using them as a card for the purpose of removing the Jewish state. Now, the question is, why wasn't, well, you could call it a Palestinian state, but how if I call it like, why wasn't a new Arab state created in the then called Palestine, when actually in 1947, on the 29th of November, the United Nations declared that the land will be divided into 2, and there will be a Jewish state and an Arab state inside of the then called Palestine. But yet the Arabs refused to accept that predicament. In other words, if we're talking about having 2-state solution, that already was instructed from 29th of November in 1947. The 2-state solution was already the recommended plan. The only ones that accepted the plan was Israel, kind of like the Solomon's, the Solomon's trial, when he decided to see who was the mother and said, let's cut the child in 2. And what happens is that Israel actually took the opportunity to establish an Israeli state, the first Jewish state since 2,000 years of exile. in spite of the fact that the Arabs refused and rejected the proposition and the recommendation of the United Nations, Israel did a unilateral move and established on the 14th of May of 1948, Ben-Gurion declared, we have now established a Jewish state, and we call it the State of Israel. And so to go back to try to make something happen that the Arabs rejected it in the first place is totally ridiculous. And you ask yourself, how can it be then that the Oslo Accords happened and the two-state deception plan happened and that they are still thinking that a Palestinian Authority with a Palestinian state is a viable solution? If they rejected it in 1947, why would they accept it today? And in fact, throughout all the different cadences of different prime ministers we've had, I remember one, for example, Ehud Barak, that when Yasser Arafat was the one ruling the Palestinian Authority and he was the head of the PLO, he actually refused to accept almost all of Judea and Samaria that was being given by Barak, and half of Jerusalem, all of East Jerusalem, and all of that he refused to accept it. Why? Because he cannot accept it. And you're going to see why he cannot accept it. He cannot accept anything but the whole land of Israel without any Jewish state in it. There is no way that they can accept the two-state deception. And obviously they have not. And so let's continue on. You're going to see some more things. Let's take a look at the Nakba for a moment. We're going to watch a video right now on the Nakba, that catastrophe, the day where all these 700,000 Arabs fled from the then called Palestine, emerging state of Israel, and leaving their villages and their houses. Let's put the video on.
Arab states went to war with the Israelis after this. This is a big moment. 4 p.m., Rothschild Boulevard, David Ben-Gurion officially declaring Israel an independent state. The Jews finally have a home. His talk is pretty nationalistic and very thoughtful. He stresses on points like the state of Israel would strive to develop the land for the good of all its residents, be based upon foundations of liberty, justice, and peace, and that Israel would ensure social and political rights to all citizens without discrimination of religion, race, or sex. But did any of that happen? See, Palestine after World War I was under British control and was seeing a series of violent outbreaks between the Arabs and Jews. And to resolve that, the UN proposed a partition plan which would divide the land into two states, Jewish Israel and Arab Palestine, while keeping Jerusalem a UN-controlled international zone. The votes came in. 33 countries approved, 13 countries voted against it, while 10 completely abstained from voting. And although the Arab states walked out as a form of protest, the partition plan was adopted. On the ground, tensions were high, and they continued to escalate with the massacre at Deir Yassin. This started the mass exodus of Palestinians, while Jewish immigration, which was encouraged by the Zionists, was on the rise. Arab states went to war with the Germans from Czechoslovakia and used the time to reorganize. This brings us to a turning point in the history of the war. As soon as the ceasefire was over, Israel launched a counter-offensive, occupying 2 strategic Arab towns which were allocated to Arab Palestine by the UN. 70,000 Palestinians who lived there were forced to flee. The Israelis closed in and continued occupying the areas allocated to the Palestinians. And the Arab armies were not as effective as they were in the first round of fighting. There was little coordination and virtually no cooperation, says Avishlam. The Arab states who were led by Egypt responded by announcing the establishment of a Gaza-based Palestinian government. But this was more of a strategic move by King Farouk to prevent King Abdullah's ambitions to expand his borders. Israel watched the Arab feud, all the while consolidating its own position. It began singling out Egyptian forces with an aerial campaign. Egypt appealed to its Arab allies for help, but its appeals fell on deaf ears, And Avishlam says that the Arab states were either afraid to intervene or did not wish to intervene. By the end of the year, the Egyptians were defeated in Gaza and could no longer support the dream of a unified Palestinian homeland. Desperate, Egypt turned to Britain for help to preserve its territorial integrity. An armistice was signed with Israel, and the other Arab states followed suit and signed separate bilateral agreements with Israel, who now was controlling 78% of the entire territory. This brings us to the end of the war. What did the First Arab-Israeli War bring? An Egyptian military presence in the Gaza Strip, and Jordan was gifted the West Bank as a token for its loyalty to Britain and the Zionists. Meanwhile, 700,000 Palestinians were driven out of their homeland. And the UN's two-state solution? Well, it never saw the light of day. It's been 70 years. The crisis of this catastrophe continues.
Well, obviously, the lady that was the broadcaster was not especially a lover of Israel, and I actually like to put those kind of videos because it's easy to refute it, and it's wonderful to see the way that they are actually, well, wonderful. It's enlightening to see how they are lying. So the thing is that, as you can see, the pressure and the stress is always on Israel. Israel needs to solve this. Israel did it. Israel is the one that's doing that against the Gazans, against the poor Palestinians, against this. She's perpetuating. She expelled. Nothing like that. It was the Arab nations that told them to leave, and eventually Israel won the war, and we ended up with more territory. But not because we started the war, but because we won the war. And that's the importance of Israel, to actually win all wars, because at the end of the day, this is the way that Yahweh, the God of Israel, has been restoring the territory that he promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob from the river in Egypt to the Euphrates River. So we could have a chant from the river to the river instead of from the river to the sea, which is a genocidal chant, because it means that there will be absolutely no Jewish presence from the river to the sea, or at least no Zionistic presence, which means nobody that will believe that Israel belongs to the Jewish people, according to the covenant. But now we are going to talk about something very interesting. And we are going to actually talk about the whole story, okay? The Nakba, the fleeing of the 700,000 Arabs, leaving and evacuating all their villages that eventually Israel takes over, is the issue of the conflict. In other words, that's the key. If we understand that, we understood why there is no peace plan possible with those that believe that the only way forward is to return here, the refugees, or their children and grandchildren that have grown in Europe and South America and different places. And instead of 700,000, there now become 6 million people that call themselves Palestinians. Okay, now, so let me go back. I'm going to go back. Where did the story begin? So the story actually began with a personality. And this personality, his name is Hajj Amin al-Husseini. He was the Mufti of Jerusalem. He was the biggest, highest, most important, most influential personality in Jerusalem during the British Mandate. And this particular Mufti actually did a lot of things. And what we're going to see right now is we're going to see a video before we go into understanding the booklet. We're going to see a video of the pogroms of 1929 and 1936 by the Mufti. Now, this Mufti began to sell the idea, and understand that 1929, 1936, actually my family was already here in the old city of Jerusalem. And the Mufti began to sell the idea that the Jews have begun to return to the land because they want to reestablish their temple. And they want to reestablish their temple on the Temple Mount, obviously, where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is and the Dome of the Rock is. And therefore, even though no Jew was talking about it at the time, they apparently got it somewhere that the Jews are going to do it. And therefore, all the Arabs needed to arise to defend what they called the third most important place for Islam in the world, which is actually the Temple Mount or the Al-Aqsa or where the Dome of the Rock, that golden dome that everybody sees is. The problem with the narrative is that the Jerusalem or the Temple Mount is not mentioned in the Quran, which is the Muslim holy book, not even one time. And the narrative of the Muslims is that Muhammad went from the Temple Mount, or what they call the Al-Aqsa compound, up to heaven and met with angel Gabriel, who gave him the Quran, and that happened there in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. But the Quran doesn't say it. The Quran says that Muhammad went to a remote sanctuary, and from that remote sanctuary, he went up on a winged mythological horse, and he took off to heaven, and he met with angel Gabriel, and he received the holy book, the Quran, for the Muslims. Jerusalem is not mentioned. The Temple Mount is not mentioned. But after the 7th century, when Islam began its conquest of the entire Middle East and much more, it also took over the Temple Mount, and it established the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And today it is called the Al-Aqsa Compound. So now, this Mufti personality that is an Arab Nazi, and I'm going to tell you why I call him an Arab Nazi. He went ahead and began to incite the Arabs living in the then called Palestine to butcher the Jews, because if not, they are going to conquer Al-Aqsa and reestablish their holy temple there. Let's see a little bit of those, the footage of these pogroms, please, of the Grand Mufti and the butchering of the Jews, 1929-1936, prior to the establishing of the State of Israel.
מנהיגם של ערביי ארץ ישראל, המופתי חאג' אמין אל-חוסייני, היה בגלות ברלין, שם ניהל את המשרד הערבי שעסק בתעמולה ובריגול. המופתי עשה שירותים חשובים לאס-אס, ובשל כך ימצא עצמו אחרי תבוסת גרמניה ברשימת פושעי המלחמה. ב-28 בנובמבר 1941, שבוע לפני פתיחת מחנה ההשמדה הראשון בחלמנו על יד לודג', נפגש חאג' אמין עם היטלר.
empfing den Großmufti von Jerusalem, einen der einflussreichsten Männer des arabischen Nationalismus. Der Großmufti ist das religiöse Oberhaupt der Araber in Palästina und gleichzeitig deren oberster Richter und Finanzverwalter. Wegen seiner nationalen Haltung verfolgten ihn die Engländer erbittert und setzten auf seinen Kopf einen Preis von 25.000 Pfund aus. Auf abenteuerlichen Wegen gelangt er über Italien nach Deutschland.
Yeah, okay, what really showed you there is original footage from the Mufti that had been ousted by the British by then because he had done he has incited the Arab mobs to go ahead and to butcher on the Jews, even though the British really didn't protect the Jewish population at the time. But eventually the Mufti became a great trouble to the British themselves. And so they ousted him, and he ended up in 1942 visiting Hitler in Berlin and making a covenant with Hitler. The purpose of the covenant was to actually establish the same plan of the final solution inside of the then called Palestine, which is the land of Israel, in order to butcher all of the Jews that are inside of the land of Israel. I want you to know that until the Mufti began to incite the people, actually the Arab population, together with the Jewish population, lived pretty much in peace. They knew each other. They were good neighbors in the old city. They definitely shared the same space and commerce and everything like that. And there were no real skirmishes there until the Arabs, incited by the Mufti, began to butcher on the Jews. And eventually, when the Jewish state is established in the 14th of May of 1948, then, of course, we establish also what we call the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Forces. I mean, if it would have been that Israel wanted to have a battle with its Arab neighbors, then it would have been called the IOF, Israel Offense Forces. But it's not called Israel Offense Forces. I think maybe it should change its name, but it's called Israel Defense Forces, because since then, Israel has been always in the defensive, being always attacked by the Arabs, and always having to defend itself and eventually ending up with more territory. But really, what the Jewish people wanted to do when they began to come here from all over Europe and all over the world, what they wanted to do is conquer the land by agriculture. Remember, I showed you what Mark Twain said about the land, that it's a desolation, that it's a disgrace, that it's literally under a curse, and there's nothing in this land. And there's other places where he says that he saw a bunch of goats that were eating. The only thing that they could be eating is gravel because there's no grass to be found, and things like that. And so the only thing that the Jewish people wanted to do is conquer their promised land, the land that they read about, that they declared every Pesach, every Passover next year in the rebuilt Jerusalem. They just wanted to reconquer it through agriculture, not through war at all. But the Arabs forced the Jews to fight, and they keep on forcing us to fight all the way to October 7th, the massacre by Hamas. Now, let's take a look at the Mufti's book that was found, a very revealing book, that it's a kind of a Mein Kampf of the Mufti of Jerusalem. Let's put, please, the slide of a small booklet sets that it's called Islam and the Jews, began to be distributed in the Middle East, written by the Mufti, but the author's name was not mentioned. The booklet was written by a great cleric and scholar from Palestine. The booklet was translated a year later. The Muslim Brotherhood, I want you to remember that name, because the Muslim Brotherhood and ISIS is the same. The Muslim Brotherhood is behind every wicked thing that happens against the Jewish people. So the Muslim Brotherhood in Cairo published an identical booklet in which I was mentioned, meaning the Mufti says I was mentioned, into German and Croatian during World War II, and was distributed to Bosnian Muslim SS soldiers of the 13th SS Mountain Division, Khandiyar. The booklet includes halachics and anti-Jewish Islamic traditions from the early days of Islam, that's the 7th century, and the Mufti used them as evidence to refute his anti-Semitism. In this regard, many follow his example, especially the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. The Mufti used the Prophet Muhammad's conflicts with the Jews to show that the eternal nature of the Jew is treacherous, lurking, and plotting against Islam and the Muslims. So now, this is not only an issue with a Palestinian state, but it goes back to the Mufti that incites the Arabs, and that makes a covenant with Hitler, and that distributes a booklet to the SS. And it actually takes the conflict all the way to the 7th century, the rise of Islam when Muhammad comes into the scene. That's quite amazing. But let's keep on reading. The Mufti's hatred and anti-Semitism were at their peak months after the surrender of Nazi Germany. It is no coincidence that several of their places, the Mufti's industry of hatred and anti-Semitism, reached its peak months after the surrender of Nazi Germany. On November 2, 1945, again, on the day commemorating the Balfour Declaration, many synagogues in Egypt not even in the then called Palestine. In Egypt, synagogues were burned, and dozens of Jews were killed in the streets of Cairo. It is no coincidence, and on that day, Libyan Jews from Libya were also attacked. And there's been no state of Israel yet. Okay? We don't have a state yet. Libyan Jews were also attacked. In fact, the Libyan Jewish community suffered hundreds of deaths and injuries and serious damage to property from the harassment of the Mufti's many loyalists and supporters in the Arab world. In Libya alone, 9 synagogues and hundreds of residential buildings were vandalized and set on fire. Jewish shops and businesses were robbed. Sounds like Kristallnacht in Germany in 1938. Jewish shops and businesses were robbed, looted, burned, destroyed, and damaged. This attack on the Jews of Egypt and Libya precisely on the day of the Balfour Declaration. Quote unquote, I want to explain the Balfour Declaration from 1917 is that promise of the British Crown to establish a Jewish national home in the then called Palestine that include the Jordan of today. Okay, so this attack on the Jews of Egypt and Libya, precisely on the day of the Balfour Declaration, is without a doubt the result of the Mufti's guiding hand and his influence on the Arab world and its decision makers. There is no doubt that the persecution of Jews in Arab countries stemmed from the Mufti's influence, and especially from the propaganda he spread for many years. And so we are dealing with a conflict of 100 years, because many years is all the way to the 20s. Many generations that the Mufti educated and raised, such as the Ali Hassan Salame family, prepared the ground for the attack on Jews in Arab countries. Okay, so we can see that this personality, this Muslim personality, is actually the instigator behind all that is happening today. And that's the reason why I call actually the Palestinian cause Hitler's child, but let me not jump the gun here. Let me go in order. Okay, so the secret plans, I'm going to show you secret plans that the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, had. The extermination crematoria in the Dothan Valley. There is no doubt the Dothan Valley is in the north of Israel. There is no doubt that the Mufti was aware of the final solution and the extermination of Jews in Europe from the very beginning of the extermination operations. A Holocaust survivor reported that the Mufti himself visited the extermination camps in Poland with Heinrich Himmler, who was the head of the SS, the head of the Gestapo, and the Minister of the Interior of the German Reich. However, the Mufti was not satisfied with this and continued to plan the extermination of Jews in Arab countries and the Jews of the land of Israel. He spoke openly about the deportation of Jews from Arab countries. And at the same time, by the way, that exactly happened. If we're talking about those that have been expelled and deported, is all the Jews from the Arab countries, not the Arabs from the only Jewish state. So he spoke openly about the deportation of Jews from Arab countries, and at the same time worked secretly and behind the scenes to establish extermination camps, which would absorb all Jews of Arab countries and Jews of the land of Israel, and to implement the Mufti solution plan in the Middle East. The Mufti solution plan in the Middle East is an improvement on the final solution of Hitler. This was revealed by Haviv Kanaan, the researcher, journalist, and police chief during the mandate, who wrote many books on the subject of Nazi propaganda. Kanaan, who after retiring from the police, worked as a journalist for the newspaper Haaretz, Israeli newspaper, investigated the issue of the establishment of the extermination camps. He revealed that the Mufti planned to establish crematoria for Jews in the Dothan Valley area. He based his words on the testimony of Faiz Bek al-Adrisi, who was the senior Arab officer in the Mandate Police and commander of the Villages District in the Jerusalem district. A shiver runs through my body today when I recall what was said in police circles and among the Mufti's supporters in those months. I've been saying for decades now that the two-state solution is Hitler's child, that the Palestinian cause is Hitler's child. When I started to say that, no one was speaking about it. I couldn't find any books that will confirm it when I started talking about it right after the Oslo Accords. Today, I can find books that can confirm it and that are unearthing the history, the true history of what the Mufti calls the Mufti solution for the Middle East, which is the extension of the final solution, murdering all the Jews in the Middle East and in Israel. So you see, my sources here are Al-Haram, Klaus Michael Mellman, and Martin Cooper's The Elimination of the Jewish National Home in Israel, and many others. Okay, I've got a lot of different sources, but the point is that this is now confirmed. There are many sources that confirm it. Now, we're going to make a little pause here. I'm very happy that you've stayed with me thus far, but please bear with me and stay all the way to the end, because you're going to discover many more important things as we continue going on. We are just in the middle. And so we're going to make this pause with a video. And now again, this video is kind of AI created. And you're going to see that it's also pretty slanted concerning Israel. But it presents the Israel-Palestinian conflict. And I want you to watch the video and already process by yourself the things that I've spoken, that I've proven to you from sources that are bona fide sources. And watch the video and see what do you see that is even wrong with the narrative, even though the facts seem to be all really right. And there are many facts that are right, but the narrative is wrong. Let's go ahead and see the history of Israel-Palestine conflict. Go ahead, it's 10 minutes.
Israel, the world's only Jewish state, located east of the Mediterranean Sea, and Palestine, the territory of the Arab population that hails from the Israel-controlled land, have long been known for their enduring conflict with the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The tension between Israel and Palestine has been deteriorating in years, climaxing with many violent clashes between the two sides. To understand the root of the Israel-Palestine conflict, we have to look back a few thousand years ago. Early history of Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In the 17 centuries BC, following the call of God, three patriarchs of the Jewish people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, settled in Canaan, a region approximating present-day Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip, parts of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. The region later had the name the Land of Israel, the Promised Land, the Palestine region, or the Holy Land. In 1000 BC, King Saul established the Israelite monarchy, which then was ruled by King David, who made Jerusalem the capital of his kingdom, and his son King Solomon, who built the first temple in Jerusalem. After the death of King Solomon, the United Monarchy was split into the Kingdom of Israel in the north, with Samaria as the capital, and the Kingdom of Judah in the south, with Jerusalem as the capital. The land became home to a majority of Jews, but then it was subject to numerous conquests of various groups, leading to the significant decrease of the Jewish population on the land. One of these conquests was conducted by the Roman Empire, who gave the name Palestine to Judah, intending to break the Jewish connection with the land of Israel. During this time, Christianity, which started as a Jewish sect, ultimately became a dominant religion toward the end of the Roman Empire. In the 7th century came an Arab conquest, beginning the spread of Islam. The Dome of the Rock was built on the ruin of the Second Temple, making Jerusalem the holy city to three monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. After Christians in Jerusalem were intensely persecuted by the Seljuk Turks, a Central Asian empire with ambition to expand its territory, Christians in Europe launched several crusades to bring the Holy City back to the hand of the Christians. During this time, many Jews were killed. Others were making pilgrimages everywhere, mostly in Western Europe. From the 16th century to World War I, the Holy Land, along with much of the Middle East, was ruled by the Ottoman Empire, an Islamic superpower. The land was unofficially called Palestine. At the same time in Europe, more and more Jews were joining a movement called Zionism, aiming to create a Jewish national state in its ancient homeland. Hence, in the first decade of the 20th century, tens of thousands of Jews moved from Europe back to the region. Israel and Palestine under the British rule. World War I exploded and ended with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Its land in the Middle East was carved by the British and French empires. The British then gave more independence for Iraq and Jordan, and the region remaining under the control of Britain was what it called the British Mandate for Palestine, where Britain promised to establish a Jewish national homeland under its Balfour Declaration, which went into effect in 1923. Tensions between the Jews and the Arabs who both claimed the land grew, which even led to acts of violence. By the 1930s, following the increasing Jewish population in Palestine due to the fear of persecution during the Nazi reign in Germany, the British limited Jewish immigration. In response, the Jewish militias formed to both fight the Arabs and resist the British rule. Then came the Holocaust throughout Nazi Germany, which claimed almost 6 million Jewish lives. After the war, more and more Jews then fled from Europe to Palestine to seek a homeland, escalating the tension with the Arabs. Overwhelmed by the situation, Britain began to withdraw from the region. The birth of the Israel state. After World War II, the UN proposed a plan to partition Palestine into two independent states, a Jewish state and an Arab state, with the city of Jerusalem becoming an international zone with a special status. However, the plan according to which the Jewish, accounting for only 1/3 of the population, was granted more territory, 56.5% of the land, was rejected by the Arabs. They began to form volunteer armies throughout Palestine. Less than 1 year after that, as Britain completed its withdrawal from Palestine, Israel declared itself an independent state, marking a new, bloodier chapter in the struggle between the Jews and the Palestinian Arabs. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Right after the announcement of an independent Israel, a war between the Arabs and the Jews broke out, which was known as the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The war involved 5 recently independent Arab nations, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, the Arab League, who invaded the region in an attempt to establish a unified Arab Palestine. However, a ceasefire agreement was reached a year later in which more than 2/3 of historic Palestine, including the West Jerusalem, belonged to Israel, while Jordan occupied East Jerusalem and the area known as the West Bank, and Egypt occupied the Gaza Strip. As a result, more than 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from the land where they lived for centuries on the day that they call Al-Nakba, or the catastrophe. With the deteriorated dispute between the Jews and the Arabs, there came more wars and fighting in the following decades. The 60-Day War. It was in 1967 when the 60-Day War broke out after a volatile period of diplomatic friction and skirmishes between Israel and its neighboring Arab states, Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. This brief war ended with the victory of Israel, giving Israel control over the Golan Heights from Syria, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. Sinai was later returned to Egypt under the Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty. After the war, most Palestinian refugees and their descendants were not allowed to return to their homes, but had to live in Gaza, the West Bank, and neighboring Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. The First Intifada and the Oslo Accords. The settling in the Palestinian territories in the West Bank and Gaza gave rise to the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, first founded in Cairo, Egypt in 1964 to create a liberated Palestine in Israel. The PLO launched attacks on Israel from its base in Jordan. It was then forced to move from Jordan to Lebanon, starting to carry out acts of terrorism against Israel. Fighting went on for years, including the Israeli invasion of Lebanon to kick the PLO out of Beirut. The PLO eventually agreed to divide the land between Palestine and Israel, but there were still more and more Jewish settlers moved into the Israel-occupied Palestinian territories. In 1987, a violent Palestinian uprising was ignited, starting from the Jabalia refugee camp after an Israeli Defense Forces truck collided with two Palestinian civilian vans, killing 4 of them. This was known as the First Intifada. This bloody conflict, resulting in hundreds of deaths, triggered a peace process with the signing of the Oslo Accords by Israel and the PLO, the Oslo I Accord signed in Washington, D.C., and the Oslo II Accord in Taba, Egypt. According to the Oslo Accords, the West Bank was divided into 3 areas. Area A was exclusively controlled by the Palestinians. Area B was controlled by both the Palestinians and Israel. Area C was fully controlled by Israel. The Second Intifada. Though further peace talks continued in 2000, the Israelis and Palestinians could not reach agreements on issues like the status of Jerusalem, rights of refugees, and the increased Jewish settlement in Palestinian lands. Ariel Sharon, a Jewish Israeli who would later become Israel's prime minister, visited the Temple Mount, home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. The action was deemed offensive by many Palestinians, and the Second Intifada broke out. The violence ended with Israel's withdrawal from Gaza, but continued to settle in the West Bank. Israel conflict with Hamas. Hamas is a Sunni Islamist militant group aiming to destroy the state of Israel and create an Islamic state. After the armed conflict between Hamas and Fatah, who managed the PLO, Hamas split from the Palestinian Authority and gained power in the Gaza. Israel put Gaza under a suffocating blockade, leading to several bloody wars between the two groups in the Gaza Strip, including Operation Cast Lead, Operation Pillar of Defense, and Operation Protective Edge. In 2014, Hamas and Fatah reached agreement to form a national unity government. In 2018, the U.S. Embassy was relocated from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which was deemed by the Palestinians as a signal of American support for Jerusalem as Israel's capital. 2021, the conflict between Israel and Palestine was reassumed by a series of hostile events in East Jerusalem, leading to several acts of violence until a ceasefire deal brokered by Egypt, Qatar, and the United Nations came into effect on May 21st. Peaceful though it may seem now, the complex and long-lasting territorial dispute between two states is a ticking time bomb that can explode any time.
Obviously, this AI did not include October 7th massacre, and that followed afterwards. And you can see, of course, that this is an AI presentation. And the AI presentation normally takes all the narratives that are happening in the social media and makes one big salad out of it, and therefore presents Israel as the occupation, the Palestinian state, or the Palestinians as the victims. And that's technically how it presents it. But we're going to take a look at the moment, as I've showed you clearly, that the author of what we call the Palestinian cause is actually Haj Amin al-Husseini, the one that already had extermination camps ready and crematorias ready to exterminate the Jewish people, and he called it the Mufti's final solution. Who met with Hitler and made a covenant with the Nazis, and therefore the entire Palestinian cause is Hitler's child. But the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, doesn't really start officially called that way. They don't get organized in that sense under that slogan until 1964, which is prior to the Six-Day War. We're going to see who actually was the one that established that Palestinian Liberation Organization, but actually who was the main ruler of it. But before we talk about that main ruler, let us take a look at what does it say. What does the charter of the Palestinian Liberation Organization say? And we're going to see it right now from the Palestinian Charter. Let's take a look at some of the articles of the Palestinian Manifesto. That is like the Constitution of the Palestinians. Here's the Constitution, Article 9. Armed struggle is the only way to liberate Palestine. This it is the overall strategy, not merely a tactical phase. The Palestinian Arab people assert their absolute determination and firm resolution for the liberation of their country and their return to it. They also assert their right to normal life in Palestine and to exercise the right to self-determination and sovereignty over it. Okay, so that's our Article 9. And Article 10, commando action constitute the nucleus of the Palestinian Popular Liberation War. This requires its escalation, comprehensiveness, and the mobilization of all the Palestinian popular and educational efforts and their organization and involvement in the armed Palestinian revolution. It also requires the achieving of unity for the national Watani struggle among the different groupings of the Palestinian people and between the Palestinian people and the Arab masses, so as to secure the continuation of the revolution, its escalation and victory. Okay, Article 19. The partition of Palestine in 1947 and the establishment of the State of Israel are entirely illegal, regardless of the passage of time, because they were contrary to the will of the Palestinian people and to their natural right in their homeland, and inconsistent with the principles embodied in the Charter of the United Nations, particularly the right to self-determination. Okay, so what are they saying here? They're saying that the partition of Palestine, 1947, that the United Nations itself recommended, actually is illegal, and therefore the establishing of the State of Israel is illegal, and this is the constitution of the Palestinians. Therefore, the armed struggle must continue until there is no State of Israel. Let's keep reading. Continue on to Article 20. The Balfour Declaration, the mandate for Palestine. I told you that happened in 1917 at the end of the First World War, when Lord Balfour signed that declaration that the crown, the crown of England, of Great Britain, would look favorably into the establishing of a Jewish national home in the then called Palestine, which included large portions of Jordan of today that didn't exist as the country of Jordan. That country was established by the British themselves, eventually used as a weapon against the State of Israel. So the Balfour Declaration, the mandate of Palestine, and everything that has been based upon them are deemed null and void. Now, if the Balfour Declaration of 1917 is null and void, then the State of Israel is null and void. Claims of historical or religious ties of Jews with Palestine are incompatible with the facts of history and the true conception of what constitutes statehood. Judaism, being a religion, is not an independent nationality, nor do Jews constitute a single nation with an identity of its own. They are citizens of the states to which they belong. Wow, you know, it just reminds me what Hitler said. Hitler said, tell a lie, make it big enough, and everyone will believe it. So this is one big lie. It's made quite big. Because to say that there is no historical or religious ties of the Jews into Israel, the promised land, that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all the history that's both biblical and it's also documented by many historians, that is quite a big fat lie, unfortunately, believed by many people. Article 21. The Arab Palestinian people, expressing themselves by the Armed Palestinian Revolution, reject all solutions. Mark it down, write it in your note. Reject all solutions, which are substitutes for the total liberation of Palestine, and reject all proposals aiming at the liquidation of the Palestinian problem or its internationalization. In other words, there is no solution to the conflict that started the Mufti. There is no solution. A two-state is not a solution. The only solution would be one state, a Palestinian Arab Muslim Sharia state without not one Jew in it or Zionist in it. And even if Jews would be in it, they would have to be a subordinate people to the Muslim Arabs that would be ruling here, and the state of Israel would be no more. And for that purpose, then they refused to dismantle the refugee camps. There's been many attempts by Israel to dismantle them, to give a life to these people, and nothing was accepted. And of course, we can look towards what happened in Gaza that was fattened by the money of Qatar, the United States, UNRWA, and all the nations that donated to UNRWA billions and billions of dollars. And it became a Singapore of the Middle East as a terror launching base. And so it does that, and they did not dismantle the refugee camps either. No matter how much money, no matter how much good life you can promise them, they will not accept it, because their only option by which are willing to die, because they do not know how to live, the option by which are willing to die, even as suicide bombers and everything like that, is to remove the Jewish state from Israel altogether and for it to cease to exist. As we know, that is an anti-biblical solution, but also it is a ridiculous solution, and it will never happen because Israel is forever. Article 22. Zionism is a political movement. I don't know why we don't have that, but Article 22 said Zionism is a political movement. It's not what is in the in right now, what you see on the screen, okay? Zionism is a political movement organically associated with international imperialism and antagonistic to all action for liberation and to progressive movements in the world. This is what the manifesto, the Palestinian Manifesto, the Palestinian Constitution says. It is racist, fanatic in its nature, aggressive, expansionist and colonial in its aims, and fascist in its methods. Israel is the instrument of the Zionistic movement and geographical base for world imperialism, placed strategically in the midst of the Arab homeland to combat the hopes of the Arab nation for liberation, unity, and progress. Progress. They burn the country down and they call it progress. They butcher and they rape and they call it progress. Well, Israel is a constant source of the threat vis-a-vis peace in the Middle East and the whole world. Now, since the liberation of Palestine will destroy the Zionist and imperialist presence and will contribute to the establishment of peace in the Middle East, we're going to talk about peace in a moment, the Palestinian people look for the support of all the progressive and peaceful forces and urge them all, irrespective of their affiliations and beliefs, to offer the Palestinian people all aid and support in their just struggle for the liberation of their homeland. And that, of course, explains UNRWA, that in their schools you can find the book Mein Kampf of Hitler in Gaza, and you can find all the tunnels with all the weapons under the hospitals and under the kindergartens and under the schools. And that explains why also Norway is accepted many of these refugees and tries to be the nicest possible, and they've invaded Norway and they're about to take over the country with Sharia law if Norway does not wake up. In Sweden, and in fact America, we've got in Chicago right now, Dearborn, Michigan, where they have been doing parades with weapons and all kinds of imagery of ballistic missiles and you name what, and kaffirs and masks and everything possible in the midst of America, and in other places also they've been doing all kinds of things like that, and inside of the schools and the academia and the universities, where Qatar, this wonderful Qatar that just gave a lovely plane to President Trump, is the funder number one of terrorism, and it is the funder of all the terror inside and the anti-Semitism inside of all the universities of the United States of America that have opened up their doors to the money coming from Qatar. And it is the money that went into Gaza and the money that created all these missiles that were sent against Israel and all of that and all of that. Yes, and I mentioned Dearborn, Michigan a few minutes ago, as I said, of what's been happening in America as well. And so all the progressive countries have been definitely supporting, just like this manifesto says, the Palestinian manifesto, supporting the annihilation of Israel. Every dime, every money, every dollar, every yen, every euro, every kroner, everything, every money that has been put for the purpose of establishing the Palestinian cause against the occupying Israel has actually sowed into the annihilation and the removal of the state of Israel, which, as you know, pokes the God of Israel in the eye, because he said, he that touches Israel touches the apple of my eye. And of course, it causes the God of Israel to arise with a great judgment on the nations. And we are at that point right now, very serious point. And even what's happening with President Trump by solidifying this tremendous $1 trillion with Qatar, 1.2 or 1.3 trillion dollars, and all the trillions of dollars with Saudi Arabia, and all of that sounds amazing, great for the Americans. But what they do not know is that even though it looks like Trump won, actually they won. And I'm going to explain it to you why they won. And they won because of a thing called Hudna versus peace. But before we do that, let's go and keep on understanding these constitutions. Now we understand the Palestinian constitution, the PLO's constitution, the Palestinian constitution. It doesn't allow for any solution. No two states are possible. Only one state, a Palestinian, Arab, Muslim state. No Israeli state can be possible. Therefore, no solution for the conflict. Okay, now let's go. Doesn't matter how much money you'll give them. And that's the reason why Gaza, who was par excellence the Palestinian state, did October 7. Because they will never stop until they get all of Israel or nothing, and they're willing to die for it. And so no amount of money is going to convince them. Now, let's go and take a look at the Hamas Charter of 1988, which is actually a splinter of the PLO. Okay, they fought for the power inside of the PLO, but Hamas has the same purpose than the general PLO, but Hamas is a little bit more extreme, but not much. Article 6 claims that Hamas is uniquely Palestinian and strives to raise the banner of Allah over every inch of Palestine. Again, doesn't allow for any possibility of a Jewish state. For under the wing of Islam, followers of all religions can coexist in security and safety where their lives, possessions, and rights are concerned. It claims that the world will descend into chaos and war with Islam. And that's exactly what's happening right now, because Hamas and Islam and their charter has been actually invading every Western nation possible. And so at this point, I'd say the West is on the verge of losing its sovereignty to Islam and to that Sharia law where followers of all religions can coexist in security and safety, where their lives, possessions, and rights are concerned. After all the butchering we've seen of all the Hamas in October 7th, that's a very interesting coexistence that will happen. And so the battle that Israel is battling right now in all of the 10 fronts of the war is not only for Israel's sake, but it's for your sake and for your nation's sake. Because if Israel doesn't stop the Palestinians now and here, and including the PLO and Hamas now and here, and if we do not win the war, the West and the East and every other nation where the Palestinians have taken root, it's going to explode with violence, and it will be bad. Article 7 describes Hamas as one of the links in the chain of the struggle against the Zionist invaders. That's me, by the way. The day of judgment would not come until the Muslims fight and kill the Jews. No manner of money is going to convince them to do otherwise. No Trump deals is going to change this equation. Article 8. The Hamas document reiterates the Muslim Brotherhood slogan of Allah is its goal, the Prophet is the model, the Quran its constitution, jihad its path. Jihad is the holy Muslim war. Jihad its path, and death for the sake of Allah is the loftiest of its wishes. So here you go. Israel sanctifies life. The Muslim Arabs sanctify death. So the twine, as we say, can never meet. Now, let's take a look at yet one more manifesto, one more charter of also people that are considered Palestinians. As I said, an invented nation that starts from the Mufti and continues on through the Palestinian Liberation Organization. But let's take a look right now at the Houthis manifesto. You know, those Houthis that have surrendered to Donald Trump already, and for some reason they forgot to tell them, because they keep on sending missiles, ballistic missiles, our way nearly every day. And so those are the Houthis, that maybe are not attacking the ships of America in the Red Sea, but they're still attacking Israel. And so this is the slogan. Interesting, by the way, that the Houthis on purpose fired a rocket on the time that Donald Trump landed in Saudi Arabia. Very interesting timing. Kind of like saying, ha, 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 you think we've surrendered to you, but no, it's not surrendered. It's Hudna. I repeated it many times and I still haven't told you what Hudna is. But just wait, you're going to know what Hudna is. The slogan of the Houthi movement, it's called the Sarha. Well, I would change that where it says God is the greatest. It's not true. It says Allah is the greatest, because it is not about the God of Israel or, Yahweh or anything like that. So actually what it really says there, it's in Arabic, okay? It's Allah is the greatest. So there can be no God above Allah, neither God of Israel or nothing. Allah is the greatest. Death to America. Death to Israel, curse be upon the Jews, and victory to Islam. Okay, that's their banner. And so to consider any kind of peace with someone that is an avowed annihilator of America and Israel, and the purpose is to bring the victory of Islam, which means that Islam will be ruling in America, in Israel, in Europe, in South America, in Latin America, in India, in Pakistan, in India, in Malaysia, in Taiwan, in China. They want to conquer the world with Islam, that the whole world will come under Islam. And so to make peace with that, it's a ridiculous predicament. This needs to be defeated, not entreated. Unfortunately, I think that maybe President Donald Trump needs me as his advisor. And because I would advise him right now to study well the Muslim mentality and to understand the way they think, because what happens is that President Trump is thinking Western, and in his Western, especially American Western, not just any Western, but American Western, and American Western mentality is this: money buys everything, but not in the Middle East, because money does not buy everything. The Middle East is ruled by different laws. For example, the Arabs are ruled by different laws, tribal laws, because the Arabs comprise of different tribes. They're not just a unified, uniform kind of nation. The Arab nation is not an Arab nation. It's lots of different tribes, lots of different clans. They're ruled by tribal laws. They're ruled by laws of revenge, for example. And you can pay as much money as you want, and the blood revenge will not stop. So you can do any kind of deal you want to do. If there is a blood revenge, like in the case of the Nakba, which means the catastrophe that saw the Arabs in the land flee because the Arab nations told them to flee, and then Israel come and possess the places that they left, then that is an avowed situation that will not be resolved with a two-state deception or with any amount of money that you will give them. That will not be solved that way. We're going to talk about how is it going to be solved in a moment, but first I'm going to quote Yosef Haddad. And Yosef Haddad is an Israeli Arab journalist that writes in his book, Let Me Explain. Yosef, you should have that because I put it there in the latest script. So, it is important to emphasize that Arab identity is not Palestinian identity. And we must not make a mistake and join the union. Take the keffiyeh, which is the head cover, as an example. I have a picture from the age of 5 with a keffiyeh. It is, and why everyone from the Al Torah Al Arab, Arab heritage class, which we have taught for another 3 years. The keffiyeh is an Arab heritage, not a Palestinian heritage. Although the Palestinians try to appropriate it through the ranks of Yasser Arafat. Going to talk about this guy in a moment. It's going to be quite revealing. And so, and use it to build their identity. Okay, so Yasser Arafat adopted it from the general Arab population. By the way, Arafat in the past, a street poll was conducted among Palestinians, etc. They asked who the Palestinian Authority, who is most important in the Palestinian Authority and most identified with the Palestinian identity, and that was Arafat was elected almost by another people, those Palestinians who claim a long and rich heritage, long before the Jews came here, elected the one who was appointed chairman of the PLO and the PLO in 1969. 21 years after the establishment of the State of Israel. So what is he saying, Yosef Haddad here, an Israeli Arab? He's saying that the Palestinians that were here before the State of Israel was established and they claim nationhood, who do they elect as their head in 1969? Let's find out. They elect Arafat. That Palestinian symbol was actually born and raised in Egypt. Interesting. Wow. He spent many years of his life before the Oslo Accords in Kuwait, Jordan, Lebanon, and Tunisia, and died in France. He has one heir, a daughter named Zawa, who was actually born in France and now lives in Malta. And let's just say that her accent in Arabic doesn't exactly sound natural. In short, Arafat's legacy is mainly one of terror and the shedding of the blood of innocent Israelis. And if he's the figure identified with the Palestinian identity, that says a lot about the Palestinians. So this is an Israeli Arab journalist, Yosef Haddad, that is saying himself, this thing is a false narrative. This thing is nothing but a big, fat lie, because even the leader is an Egyptian and not even a Palestinian Arab. Arab identity is not an anti-Israeli identity, says Yosef Haddad. Although there are many who think so, and therefore, from the point of view, if I'm an Arab, I should automatically be anti-Israel who supports the Palestinians. So what he's saying is this, that not all the Arabs support the Palestinian cause. And praise Yah for that. Now, if you want to understand more about what he said here, what you need to read is my book, Exposing Haman, Amalek, and Hamas, because then you will understand what Yosef Haddad is actually saying. You're going to see the difference between Ishmael and Esau. And you're going to see, therefore, the difference between Ishmael and Amalek and where they intertwine. For example, Esau married Ishmael, one of Ishmael's daughters, and out of it is born Amalek. So all of this statement that he says that the Palestinians are not necessarily the same as all the rest of the Arabs, even though most of the Arabs support the Palestinian cause, and therefore even this wonderful Qatar, that is where all of the negotiations to release our hostages have been happening, is actually the home of the, well, not now because we killed them all, but it was the home of the upper echelon of Hamas that was not in Gaza. And they're the ones that gave all the money, plus UNRWA, plus the United States, plus many European nations, but especially the USA gave all the money to the Hamas in Gaza that eventually perpetrated the terror and launched the October 7th massacre of 22 peace-loving Israeli communities that were loving the Palestinians and giving them jobs and taking them to the hospitals and celebrating and commemorating their martyrs. And they were really loving on them. And they had gardeners that were Palestinians and plumbers that were from Gaza. And they had babysitters that came from Gaza. And meanwhile, what they did is they mapped the 22 communities and they mapped them exactly where the kindergarten is, where are the young people living, when do they come home, the parents, what's the name of the dog of the neighbor, what's the best time to attack. They mapped it all. And these nice civilians of Gaza, that all these 22 kibbutzniks from the 22 kibbutz communities that loved them, they took these maps to the upper echelon of Hamas in Gaza, and they planned the October 7th to the T because of these wonderful civilians that were being loved by the Israelis. I know I sound cynical to you, but the thing is that the narrative has been so ridiculously lying. And what they did when they came in wasn't only the Hamas, soldiers or terrorist combatants that came in, thousands of them, that murdered, kidnapped, looted, raped, cooked babies in the oven in front of their parents, burnt entire communities to a crisp. We've visited together with United Nations for Israel, our tour and our group. We visited in Kisufim, in the kibbutz, a house that was completely burnt, where the owner of the house led us to see the house. And we saw the house over there. And it burned to a crisp, his daughter and his son-in-law. And the only way that they could know that the daughter and the son-in-law were burnt was because they found their watch and their wedding rings in the ashes of that community. And so these are the Hamas terrorists with the Gaza civilians. Look at those that are going on the trucks with the hostages. Those are the Gaza civilians. And the Gaza civilians came in and they looted and they helped murder. And then they are the ones that hosted the hostages, many of them in their own houses when they were not inside of the tunnels. So nobody can convince me, beloveds, that there is such thing as Gaza civilians. We were there on October 7th. We were there with our International United Nations for Israel Sukkot tour group. We were 80 delegates of various nations, and we were there when the alarms began to sound, and many stayed behind with us from especially Malaysia, in Taiwan, and I think China, Hong Kong, stayed with us a little bit longer to go and help at a harrowing time that you cannot imagine, of which Israel has not yet recovered. And so, technically speaking, beloveds, we need to realize here that what we saw in October 7th is what they want to do in all of Israel. And even moderate nations like Qatar, they're the ones that are funding it. Saudi Arabia, they're not willing to recognize the state of Israel. And as long as they're not willing to recognize the state of Israel, they have exactly the same Palestinian manifesto. They do not recognize the rights of Israel to exist, nekuda, period. And so again, we can make many Trump deals with them. But unless there is something much stronger that will happen to be able to establish the fact that Israel is here to stay, then no Trump deals and no monies are going to help. But yes, it will help something. It will help terror. And therefore, removing the sanctions to Syria and giving to Saudi Arabia nuclear capabilities for civilian affairs is a serious danger to Israel, and also eventually will be for America, because, as I said, I've been repeating about this Hudna thing, and now you're going to understand why I'm saying that. I'm saying that because Hudna means a temporary ceasefire when your enemy is strong. Trump is strong. And because Trump is strong now, they're going to make peace with Donald Trump and with America. And he will be able to make every deal he can imagine, millions and trillions. It's not going to change the mentality they have. Nothing has been able to change it. And so Hudna means one, this is the Arab mentality. Please take it. Understand it. It's not like the West. It says, while your enemy is strong, make peace with him. But when you detect your enemy weak, then proceed again to break the peace treaty and attack and conquer. That's it. So Hudna is not peace, but they call it peace in Western terminology. But what I'm asking myself all the time is, why is it that nobody listens to what they say? Why don't they read the Palestinian manifesto or the Hamas manifesto or the Houthis manifesto? Why don't they listen to their news in Arabic or to their leaders when they speak in Arabic? Because when they speak in Arabic, they don't speak the same as when they speak in English. And they say the truth. They said, we will not stop until the Zionist occupier is going to be removed from the land, and we are going to completely take over and return to Palestine. In other words, what we suffered during the Nakba, when these Zionists expelled us, which is again the false narrative, but the Arab nations told them to leave because they thought they were going to win the war, but they didn't win the war. Israel won the war, and there was no way for Israel to win the 1948 war against 5 super-armed, rich Arab nations, little Israel, full of Shoah, Holocaust survivors. How put it on earth win the war against 5 Arab nations? But it did. Why? Because the God of Israel said that Israel is forever. And because it is the God of Israel that returned the Jews back to the land. And because it is the God of Israel that gives Israel every time victory in battle, so we end up with more territory. That's all. It's just very simple. If we just understand this fact, we'll understand, therefore, that defeating Hamas all the way, defeating Hezbollah all the way, defeating Al-Julani in Syria all the way, and defeating every wickedness of Hamas in Jordan all the way, defeating the uprising that is beginning to happen in Egypt all the way. And by the way, the Bible talks about it, but I don't have time to go into all of the scriptures about this right now. Maybe I will do a part 2 at some point for those that are interested. I may do a part 2. But the point is that unless Israel becomes powerful, there will be no peace. And at this point, the peace that will happen will be a temporary one because Trump is powerful. Only because Trump is powerful. But because Israel gets compromised in this powerfulness, eventually what happens is that we enter into collision with the Almighty himself that said he will bless those who bless Israel, curse those who curse her, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. So what are we going to say right now? We're going to say this one, that the God of Israel is going to have mercy on Israel, because in the Middle East, the only thing that's understood is power. And so Israel will have to become powerful, and we're going to see how it becomes powerful, because it's all stated and it's going to happen in Zechariah chapter 12. But before then, let's go and listen to a song that's called Mantle of Mercy.
נחמו נחמו עמי, כה אמר האלוהים, נחמו נחמו עמי, כה אמר האלוהים. Israel, Israel, you have risen from the dead, from the ashes of the Shoah. Israel, Israel, you will live again in Yah's power and in his land. Why do the nations rage against Yah's covenant? They make shrewd plans afresh to wipe you off the map. Israel, Israel, you have risen from the dead, from the ashes of the Shoah. Israel, Israel, you will live again in Yah's power and in his land. Why do the nations rage against Yah's covenant? Yet Israel will prevail in the power of Yeshua's blood, in the power of Yeshua's love, in the power of Yeshua's blood. compassion of Elohim. Nachamu, nachamu ami. כה אמר האלוהים, nachamu, nachamu ami. כה אמר האלוהים.
So, beloveds, I'm coming to the end of it, but not before I tell you that the key for Israel to be able to fulfill its purpose of returning back to the land is number one, that Israel will be powerful in war. And number two, Aliyah. That means Jewish people coming to the land, returning to the land from all the corners of the earth. You see, the key for the Palestinian conflict, or what they deem to be the Palestinian conflict, is the Nakba. And therefore, they want to return with all of their refugees, which is 6 million of them that are not refugees anymore. They're just families that are living in many, many different countries. And they take over the entire land. But actually, that is the solution for Israel. The solution for Israel, one, to be powerful, more powerful than the Arab nations. And the second thing is Aliyah, Jews from all over the world to come to Israel, and especially from America right now, because that's the largest population of Jewish people in the world besides Israel, is in the United States of America. So the battle is the battle of demographics. I'm going to show it to you. I'm not going to take too long on this because we're coming to the end right now, but the battle is the battle of demographics. Israel must win the battle of demographics, okay? And so let me tell you some figures. Judea and Samaria, there are 3 million Arabs, about 500,000 Jews right now. In Gaza, there are 2 million Arabs, 0 Jews, because they expelled them all in 2005. So in 2023, approximately 2.1 million Palestinians lived in the Gaza Strip. Around 1.6 million of them were UN-registered refugees. And as I said, they don't want them to dismantle the refugee camps because that is the way they keep it going. The Strip's population has continued to increase since that time. One of the main reasons being a total fertility rate now. Notice the fertility rate, 3.38 children per woman. In a ranking by total fertility rate, this places Gaza 42nd of 224 regions. In 2022, Israeli Jews self-identified as 45% secular. For some reason, you're missing the secular over there. 45% secular, it's not written there, but for some reason it was taken out. 45% secular, 10% as Haredi, which is ultra-Orthodox, 33% as Masorti, traditional, and 12% as Dati, religious or Orthodox, including religious Zionist. Arab Israelis, as of 2008, are 82.7 were Muslims, Arab Israelis, not Jews, Arab Israelis. 8.4 were Druze. Druze is not Muslims. I can't talk about the Druze right now, but they're allies with Israel. 8.3% were Christians. Now, Orthodox Jews, listen well, including Israel, US, and other nations, there are 2.2 million Orthodox Jews in the world. So this is a battle of demographics. Please keep going. Keep moving this forward. Thank you. This is a battle of demographics. Israel's total fertility rate sits at 2.9 children per woman, followed by Mexico and France with 1.8 children per woman, and almost twice the OECD average of 1.5, the report said. In 2020, the total fertility rate among ultra-Orthodox women in Israel, listen well, 6.6, higher than Gaza, higher than anywhere else. The Orthodox women have a 6.6% ratio of fertility. That's the ultra-Orthodox women. While the rate among Arab women was 3. And among secular women, it was 2.0, still well above the OECD average, according to a report from the Jerusalem Institute for Policy Research, okay? As of 2020, the American Jewish population is estimated at 7.5 million people, accounting for 2.4% of the total US population. Today, there are approximately 600,000 Orthodox Jews in the United States, plus another 850,000 in Israel, and perhaps another 750,000 committed Orthodox in the rest of the world. This means that there are approximately 2.2 million Orthodox Jews who are indeed Orthodox, that is to say, wholly committed to Orthodoxy. The Palestinian demands for the rights of return. About 700,000 Arabs fled at the beckoning of the Arab nations. Now they are demanding that them and their descendants will return, an insane demand. There are an estimated 9.17 million displaced Palestinians worldwide as of 2021, according to the Badil Resource Center for Palestinian Residency and Refugee Rights. They include approximately 8.36 million refugees and 812,000 internally displaced persons. These are not the ones who fled, but their descendants, because UNRWA had perpetuated the refugee status instead of solving it. This is on purpose in order to destroy the only Jewish state in the world. Now, look at this. How many Haredi or ultra-Orthodox Jews will be in Israel in 2050, counting that there is 6.6 ratio of birth rate among the Orthodox Jewish women. Today, Haredim compose only 13.5% of Israel's total population. But given their high birth rate, it is projected that 1 in every 3 Jewish Israelis will be Haredi by 2050. In other words, we are dealing with 33% of the Jewish people in the land of Israel will be ultra-Orthodox in 2050. The Orthodox are the key. Now, this is what I'm saying. The Orthodox are the key for the preservation of Israel. The secular lefty demonstrators that want the country back from the right wing, Orthodox and religious parties could cause the self-destruction of Israel. The Orthodox will be greatly used to keep Jewish posterity and to preserve the only Jewish state. That is the key. And let's watch at the key right now in Zechariah chapter 12, because this is what's going to happen as the Messiah is fixing to return. It says this in Zechariah 12, and we're going to read a few scriptures. Moreover, in that day I will make Jerusalem a massive stone for all the people. All who try to lift it will be cut to pieces. Nevertheless, all the nations of the earth will be gathered together against her. It will happen in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. Then I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. When they will look toward me whom they pierced, they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only son, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn. So we see an all-out war against Israel, which we definitely are already experiencing. And it will continue, and it will be more, even though there may be a short period of hudna, not real peace, but hudna because President Trump is strong. And so when they will detect that Israel is weak enough, there will be again a tremendous war. And it says that at that time, at the war, the ones that are going to fight, it says, in that day there will be a great mourning in Jerusalem, a mourning like Hadad Rimon in the valley of the Megiddo. And it says the land will mourn clan by clan, the clan of the house of David by itself and their wives by themselves, the clan of the house of Nathan by itself and their wives by themselves, the clan of the house of Levi by itself and their wives by themselves, the clan of the Shimeites by itself and their wives by themselves. Each of the remaining clans will mourn by itself and their wives by themselves. The only ones that mourn separately or pray separately or celebrate separately are the ultra-Orthodox Jews. And therefore, there's still a partition at the Kotel, at the Western Wall, whereby the women prayed on the right-hand side and the men pray on the left-hand side. And even though Yeshua broke down the middle wall of partition, that wall of partition still exists among the ultra-Orthodox Jews. And therefore, we can safely say that when the Messiah actually reveals himself to Israel in mass, and when there is the biggest revival in Israel, it's not yet the return, but the revival of Israel, it will be at the middle of a great war, where about all the nations coming against Jerusalem, and you are going to see that in every one of the flags of Hamas, what you see is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the Temple Mount. So the war will always be over Jerusalem, okay? And so that's why it's so important that you all are supporting our Watchman apartment on the east side of Jerusalem, overlooking the Mount of Olives and across the Temple Mount. Because we are going to be standing there as a deterrent against that takeover. Yes, United Nations for Israel and us, Rabbi Baruch, myself, and all those that are going to come and pray in that place, then they are going to stand as the deterrent against the takeover. But the thing is this, the thing is that the battle is against Jerusalem, but at that time, it's going to strengthen. It says even the weakest one, in Zechariah 12, it says, even the wicked one, the weakest one will be like David, like the angel of Yahweh, fighting for them. So we are going to deal with a very strong Israel, full of the power of Yah, which we already have seen in the Iron Swords War, that the spirit of David has fallen upon the Israeli soldiers that go to battle, praying, declaring the Shema Israel, and declaring, blowing shofars, and bringing in Torahs, putting mezuzahs at the doors of Gaza, and things like that. We're going to see it in even a greater scale as this war comes about, and it will come about, maybe after a certain amount of little chudna, but it will come about, a bigger war, and we're going to see an outpouring of the spirit of grace and supplication, a great revival among the ultra-Orthodox Jews. And they're the key for the preservation of Israel, so that Israel will not be only 77, but 87 and 97 and 107. In fact, I would say that Israel is forever. And that's exactly why we call this very particular Zoom seminar, Israel is forever. The battle of demographics, the aliyah from all the nations of the earth. So what you see right now as the anti-Semitism that is rising up in many nations in the world will actually lead to the aliyah en masse of many Jews. They will come from all over the world. And there's been a lot of aliyah, even in the midst of the war. We've had Jews relocating, even American Jews relocating into Israel. And what we need to be praying is more aliyah, more Jews to make aliyah, to relocate, to win the battle of demographics. If all the Jews were in Israel right now, and all the ultra-Orthodox were here at the rate of 6.6% of birth rate, then the battle of demographics would have been won over, because what they want to do is an invasion of Israel. And the only thing that will win it again, powerful Israel in war and the battle of demographics. And then, of course, the outpouring of the spirit of grace and supplication, that is not going to be to stop Israel from winning the war, but actually will help Israel to win the war against their enemies. And then eventually the Messiah will return, but that's for another Zoom conference and not for this one. I would like to finish at this point and say thank you to all of you that joined us today. I really hope that you all received something, and you can go ahead and type some things on the text message. It would be great to read your comments on how this has blessed you. And I would also like to call on all of you to join with us. The United Nations for Israel is a movement that stands with Israel, even when Israel cannot stand for herself. And we want to invite you to join in to support Israel with boots on the ground, to come on our tours of Israel as well. And the upcoming tour that we're having is going to be during Sukkot. And if you enjoyed this seminar, you're going to enjoy that tour in a tremendous way, because I take you to places that tourists don't go. And I take you and I give you information that tourists don't get. So I invite you to come on our God of Wonders Sukkot Tour of Israel on October 3 to 15, 2025. So get ready, put the pedal to the metal, as we say, because the registration can close anytime. We are going to proceed in October, but the registration will be finished at some point, and once we are full. And so make sure that you register as soon as you can to the tour. And even if you say, well, but Archbishop Dominica, the situation in Israel is so difficult, so volatile. Let me tell you that we as United Nations for Israel have been here in difficult and volatile, and it's been awesome. Absolutely awesome. Not only the protection of Yah, but actually what he does in the hearts of the participants, and what the participants do in the hearts of the Israelis is unbelievable. It's so powerful that, maybe I will put, when we finish at the end, just go ahead and prepare that special short that we have of Unify when it visits Israel and when we plant here and what we do. But I ask you to really consider, pray about it, and obey the Holy Spirit and register to this tour. And even if you're worried about the flights or whatever, in the midst of the Iron Swords War, when things were the hottest, people found a way to come, even from Malaysia, that doesn't have diplomatic relations with Israel. Now, on top of it, I would like to also invite you to give. I want you to really consider giving, saying thank you for this seminar. I gave it to you for free, but to be honest with you, it cost me many, many years of preparation to be able to give you this seminar, both spiritual preparation and studies and a lot of other things, and of course, a lot of prayer and other things as well. So I'm inviting you to give, to actually say thank you for this seminar, and say thank you for Israel. You see, Israel is not just any other nation. Not only that Israel is forever, but Israel is the mother of the nations. So it's time to say thank you. Thank you for the Bible that was given by Israel, because it was from Israel that all the nations got the Holy Scriptures. And for the gospel that came from Israel, and for the Messiah that is a Jewish Messiah, and it came from Israel. And I could go on and on to say that you couldn't even use your cell phone right now to take a picture of this barcode if it wouldn't be for some Israelis that invented some things, being the number one startup nation in the world today. And I cannot even begin to tell you how many things that illnesses that have been prevented because of the invention of antibiotics and other things like that that are connected with Jews or with Israelis, and agriculture into nations where there was no agriculture by the amazing agricultural technology of Israel. I cannot even begin to tell you about all these advances that Israel has that has blessed the nations. Israel has been a light unto the nations, starting from the Bible, the gospel, Yeshua, and the many inventions of the Israelis. And I invite you to say thank you today, to say thank you for this seminar, and to say thank you to Israel, celebrating Israel 77, because Israel is forever. And it's great that you will say thank you and give. I also would like you to consider seriously becoming part of the United Nations for Israel, because you're going to be in a ministry like no other. It's global. Many different ministries are part of it, and they actually it changes their lives. It totally changes their lives. I also would like you to consider seriously studying with us. We have an entire Bible school online that is going to give you, what can I say? We call it the global washing machine. You're going to come in one way and leave another way. And you're going to have information again that you do not have in any other Bible school. Just like in this Zoom call, there was information that you do not get in any other Zoom call, not to this depth. You're going to get that as well, and it's going to change your life. I have many GRN students that are here on the call with me right now, and they can attest to the fact that there is a before and an after GRN Bible Institute that's accredited, that you can also go if you want to. After you study the basics, you can go ahead and make titles, BA, MA, and even all the way to PhD if you would like to. However, our purpose is that you will come to a school that has no traces of replacement theology and can restore you to the gospel made in Zion and teach you how to honor the mother of the nations, which is Israel, and be like a Ruth to a Naomi. So this is the Bible Institute that is like no other, the only one, the only Bible school like that in the world right now. So I invite you to take that. So I want to thank all of you again for joining us. Notice the books that we advised from the beginning. We advised that you will go ahead and get the following books: The Exposing Haman, Amalek, and Hamas, The Israel Factor, the Israel Factor. You can all the books can be gotten at zionsgospel.com. The Israel Factor, that book alone, it's an heirloom. It's my legacy of over 15 years of articles that I wrote that carry both the history of what happened in Israel during those years and the Oslo Accords and what happened during the different terror attacks and how I interpreted it with the Bible. So it's an heirloom. It's historical. So the Israel Factor is a book that should be on the table of everyone. So the Exposing Haman, Amalek, and Hamas, you will understand the conflict all the way to the end. The Israel Factor, you will see what has happened in Israel historically and biblically, and also understand the conflict and know how to stand with Israel. It's also extremely enlightening and very exciting to read because it's all made in articles. So you read one article, you can leave it for tomorrow and read another one. It can be like a devotional. Every day you read another one. It can also be a teaching tool where you can actually go ahead and use it to teach other people as well. And then the Sheep Nations and the Sheep Nations book. It's a tremendous book as well. And I'm going to also advise strongly about the identity theft. You're going to get the full identity of what does it mean to be grafted into the olive tree and to be the bride of Messiah and to be part of a Jewish Messiah and the covenant with Israel. In other words, you're going to understand what it really means grafted in, instead of usurping the place of Israel, joining with Israel. You will understand what the monster of replacement theology is. You will understand how to defeat it. So this book actually is the book of the century. I call it the book of the century, this one. It's totally kind of proved Christian anti-Semitism. And I do say Christian anti-Semitism because there's still a lot of it. And even many Christians that love Israel, they don't know that they've got the monster of replacement theology inside, because there are 5 heads of that monster. And you've got to cut every one of those heads to get set free. So don't overpass the identity theft. So here you go. Many books that I suggested you read. Very important, and not any less important, understanding the sheep nations. What does it mean to make sheep nations? Why are we inviting you to join the United Nations for Israel, that is the home of the sheep nations? And what is God doing? This is a prophetic happening like no other. And also another book, which is one of my latest, The Voice of These Ashes, Judgment or Restitution, or judgment. Why is it mandatory that the nations of the world, and especially the Christians in the world, will make restitution towards Israel to avert judgment in their lives, their families, and their nations? Yes, I'm sure that if you still remained with me until now, then that means you're very interested. And I'm going to tell you something, that not only we do have these books in many languages, but I'm going to tell you something, is that we are a storehouse, like a Joseph warehouse of grain. We have food in abundance for you that you cannot find anywhere else. So I want to bless you today. Thank you for being with us. And we are going to close today with the blessing that Aaron, the high priest, gave to all the children of Israel by my own husband, Rabbi Baruch Birman, that will only open his microphone and give us the blessing to all. Okay, we cannot hear Rabbi right now, but
Can you hear me now?
yes.
Okay. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. Amen.
Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom. Amen. Thank you for joining us today. Stay put and keep on following. There will be more. In Yeshua's mighty name, shalom, shalom. And you can go ahead and text on the chat, how have you been blessed by this Zoom seminar? Shalom, everyone, and lehitraot. Little did I know, when we were marching in the Jerusalem March during our Sukkot tour with about 80 delegates from 14 different nations that came with us as the United Nations for Israel to both tour the land, study, and stand with Israel. Little did we know that we actually were so meaningful, that our stand was going to be so meaningful, and that our support of Israel would be so meaningful. In fact, as we were marching and I was interviewing the people in the march, all the Israelis said exactly the same. We are so happy that you are here. We want you to be back. Many of our people stayed with me. As I said, we helped the evacuees with food vouchers and essentials. We've helped a lot of different, even soldiers that everything has been burnt down. Everything was looted by even Gaza civilians that came after the terrorists. And so they helped me. And right now, I'm just saying we have to stand with Israel, whatever it takes. This is the time to show up and to stand with Israel, whatever it takes. In whatever nation you are, wherever you're watching this, you're going to see how we march in the march. And let me tell you that after this very just war is over, we are still going to come and march in Jerusalem in the march, and even with renewed strength, because God says that He has a Brit Olam, an eternal covenant with Israel. And He said, and Israel, Judah shall be established forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation. And we say here in Israel, Am Israel Chai, the people of Israel lives. Double portion of a hug because you are less than the women. More or less. What is it? Okay. we go. Fig trees. Let's see what else. So what tree was It doesn't look like a real Jewish story. It really does.
They have the area where only the priests
Israel.
It is very prophetic for me to walk the land and speak to the land. The land is speaking to me. And, it's the prophecy that says that every man from every nation must come and hold on to the tzitzit of a Jew, because we know that the Yahweh is with them. So I'm walking this land behind Ima Archbishop Dominic Eberman, holding on to a tzitzit because I know that Yahweh is with her and I must follow. And I'm very thankful to be here.
This is my fourth Jerusalem march, and this is always like exciting, more and more exciting every year to see the Jewish people and love them and hug them and wish them Hag Sameach and show them love. It's amazing. And it's amazing how they receive it also, how they take it into their hearts and love us back. That's wonderful.
This is absolutely a blessing and fantastic to be in the land of Israel, in Zion, and to be here, stand up for the Jews and show love to the Jews, make restitution and also ask for forgiveness of what we in Europe have in our history, what happened to the Jews that have been slaughtered. So we are here to show love, show respect for this country, Israel and Jerusalem.
Actually, this is the greatest privilege to walk with the Jewish people, feel how they feel, go down when the bomb falls down. I'm here on behalf representing my government and the 10 million people plus people of the nation of Papua New Guinea who loves Israel, and they couldn't be here. Again, it's the greatest privilege to walk with the Israelis right here.
Am Israel, Am Israel, Am Israel Chai. Am Israel, Am Israel, Am Israel Chai. Am Israel, Am Israel, Am Israel Chai. Od Avinu Chai. Hey! Od Avinu Chai. Hey! Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu Chai. Od Avinu Chai. Hey! Od Avinu Chai. Hey! Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu Chai. Am Israel, Am Israel, Am Israel 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 Chai. Od Avinu Chai. Hey! Od Avinu Chai. Hey! Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu Chai. Hey! Od Avinu Chai. Hey! Od Avinu Chai. Hey! Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu Chai. Am Israel, Am Israel, Am Israel 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 Chai. Evenu shalom aleichem. Evenu shalom aleichem. Evenu shalom aleichem. Evenu shalom.